almost nobody does what the metaverse is. It's like talking about the internet back in the early 90s. No one knows what they're on about. Like, it is nothing compared to what anybody had envisioned back then. So in 10 years, the metaverse isn't going to be anything that Mark Zuckerberg thinks it's going to be. I just love it. It's like, I'm not going to be on the metaverse just to be able to check Instagram with a bigger screen. That was so spot on, man. When I watched that video that Amatron did, man, I was thinking the same thing. Like, God, this is just cringe, man. Nobody wants VR glasses for the metaverse, man. So sad. Let's see. Bring up Google Drive, because that's always the best place to work. Have you read the DPL yet?
Not entirely. I struggle to read it end to end. I sort of jump around it, and I check it against the pieces that I wanted in there.
Right.
Because I
should ask you that. I mean, is the things that you are expecting to be there, or are we missing anything?
I think they are. They just maybe too far, or not. Maybe, and this is a big maybe, because you guys have spent a lot of time on it, and I've been doing the code, but it maybe the module system doesn't kick in early enough. But I'm not sure.
So are you reading the definitions as in from the top definition down the bottom being the most important or something, or are you ranking them by the way they're introduced, or?
No, I meant the module system. There may still be more of this that can be punted out into the module system. Good morning, sir.
How are you?
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
Yeah, not too bad. Very dark here.
You look very white.
We'll start streaming.
I'm streaming. I'm doing it.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
all right,
I don't know what happens if we both start doing it. I mean, we can have a stream battle if you want.
Stream collision.
But, I mean, in Ghostbusters, you're not really supposed to
don't cross the screens, Ben.
Right, sorry, I don't want to interrupt you. I thought you were chatting there when I came on.
We were talking about the DPL. I was just answering Troy's question about is everything that I was looking for in the DPL, and my comment was that perhaps the module system doesn't kick in early enough, more can be punted out to the module system, but I'm not sure if that's the case.
Okay, all right.
Well, you called this call, so why don't you tell us how you want to proceed?
Yeah, so specifically, there's two parts to this. So not so much the content of it, although we can dip into that one. What I try to do inside that guidance on modules and contracts section is to instantiate that to the dictionary to make sure it's coherent.
So what the documents I'm looking at DPL version 0.1?
Yep. And section starting guidance on modules and contracts on page 15.
Oh, you stopped me halfway down the... Okay, fine.
Well, I'm assuming that you've read everything else.
I haven't read the whole thing. I have skimmed it multiple times.
Okay. The rest, above that, from page 14 up, Troy and I have gone through a few times now, and the comments are diminishing, although I see there's a couple from yesterday I've not looked at yet.
Yeah, that would look like a funny graph there, number of comments opened.
Yeah, that's right, yeah. So for the purposes of what I'm after in this call, I think we can take that and refer back to it. But in essence, everything above is the core DPL. And so from that...
So what am I doing, sorry?
So we're on page 15, guidance on modules and contracts. And I was hoping to elicit any comments about how I've structured it using the structure that we defined inside of the dictionary.
Oh, okay.
But that's where it starts. And just I'll do a very brief run through. So, other than the preamble, on page 16 is the way that I think the modules interact with the contract, which interacts with the core DPL, in order to allow you to print the entire thing out. And in page 17 onwards, I've put it into the structure that is currently in the dictionary, and say exactly where these things live. And that's the main thing I was hoping to talk to you about, Tom. Is like
page 17, the file structure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So maybe that's the best place to start, and I'll take you through and
so
try apology.
Fuck, that's a great question. Where would the DPL go within a person's project?
Can I give me a suggestion? So if we look at just the structure, so I'm now on page 17.
Yeah.
So I'll run through this because I've put it somewhere, but this is why, why this call. So I've just created two users. So these are, it doesn't really, Tom and Dick.
Heroin user 1 and user 2.
Yeah, there is, those two users have come together to create a project, which is Dreamcatcher command project.
Oh, yep, okay.
Yep. They've also created the core DPL license project, which you see under governance points directly back to them. So they own that core DPL license project. Any PRs against the core DPL then reference back to command, which is referenced back to those two individuals. And at the moment it's 50-50.
Yep.
So in terms of where does the core DPL, and sorry, this was one of your questions, about making sure it's locked down and changes are slow and considered and not free-for-all. That's how we do it. So the core DPL license has a project wrapper, which has the meta and the governance and so on, and owns that repo and the keys to that repo. And any PR against that is referred through governance, in this case from from core DPL license project to Dreamcatcher command project, and then on to user 2 and user 1. And that's how we control changes to the core DPL. And that core DPL, I've not put it in here, but is then put up into an app store for anyone to use under whatever license we want, which is basically it.
I was with you right up till there. The core DPL is so fundamental that it's basically tied into the publishing of the Dreamcatcher software itself. So
yes,
that's why I was
not mandatory.
That's why I was talking about this diagram, because I kind of saw this diagram as being in opposite direction, because I saw the core DPL being a fundamental, immutable part of the code base. Right?
Which diagram are you talking about, Troy? The one on 21 or the one
on 16?
16.
So it's just
let's discuss. I'm seeing it in reverse direction. Okay, that's interesting. So I don't understand what you mean by reverse. Can you go?
What I think this diagram on page 16 is showing is the core DPL as a standalone applied instance, but what Scott is showing is the provenance or the supply chain that produced the DPL and how the usage of the DPL is now reintroduced into the software lifecycle that produces the DPL.
Yes, yeah, because we've got a bootstrapping problem, right?
Well, we make the rules. We can just magic it up.
No, I think my point was I was seeing the core DPL as an atomic core of this, and then the layers of the onion kind of go outwards from that.
Why outwards?
Well, because what I'm saying is that the core DPL is like this immutable code block that's inside the actual assembly language of the Dreamcatcher machine. And then anything that you lay on top of that assembly language, the higher level languages, are the modules, the contracts, and everything else that sits on top of that stack.
Does it matter? Is the diagram not logically the same if you just...
No, not in my mind, no. I see it in the opposite direction where you have this small where module one would be, that would be the core DPL, and then the contract, and then the modules will sit above that, like a layered onion. That's just in my head.
Okay, I think that sounds logically the same, but diagrammatically different.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I could be wrong. I'm just saying that I'm just trying to understand what the diagram means in terms of the code base. Like, because
what was intending on this one is the I guess it's a reverse onion, but the overarching most important thing is the thing that encloses it all, which is the core DPL, and the rest are a bit like includes, right? So we're including a contract. The core DPL is including a contract. The contract includes module 1, module 2 in this case, but they're all referred up to the highest level in the hierarchy. The most important is the core DPL. That's what I was intending by that kind of chunking down. So it sounds like you're saying the same as I'm just saying, but the diagram's different because you're saying the core DPL is the most important and immutable. Yeah, I agree with that. That's why that's the thing that encompasses everything else. Everything else is subservient to that in this contract. And then contract module 1, module 2, you've got core DPL, and then presumably the contract as a next layer of the onion, and then the modules as the next layer.
The modules are always sitting outside somewhere.
Yeah, that sounds logically the same, unless I've misunderstood.
Sounds the same to me.
I guess my question was, am I missing something from like software engineering perspective?
No,
as to
I think you're just thinking about the same thing differently. Both diagrams would be equally accurate.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I guess I'm thinking, because we think core, I'm thinking the core of something like the middle. So
in contract, like you could think of this in terms of software engineering, like the ring model of virtualization, where like when you boot the CPU first, that's the core, and it's like, yes, it's small, yes, it's thin, but it's goddamn all powerful, and everything else relies upon it. And I believe Scott has drawn the diagram like this because of this property we wish for, which is that at any point in time, even though your module negotiations and commitments are all digital, you are at any point able to print it out on a piece of paper, and it would read logically, where the core DPL was the only thing that had your paper signature or whatever your jurisdiction demands, and everything else was sort of planted in there linearly.
Yeah.
Right. No, I agree with that, and that's exactly how I see it too. That the core always prints no matter what, but then depending on how you filter your modules, who you're talking to, who you're dealing with.
So this diagram would more represent the paper printout layout.
Is that right, Scott?
Yeah. So if you start reading it as a contract. The first thing you read is the core DPL definitions and clauses.
Right. That was my question. So I'm not reading this as architecture. I'm reading this as a document, right?
Yeah.
Well, it's sort of both. It's both. Like we need it to operate as architecture for the electronic version of the operations, but we need it to always remain translatable to document form.
Well, I mean, the print statements are just that. Like that's that's not a big deal, right? Like
it is though, because it doesn't always. If you don't do it with that goal in mind, your pieces won't linearly string together.
Oh no, I understand that. I'm just saying that, like, well, I mean, the way that to my mind, the print statements sound like they're more just like their own mini blockchains, right? So then you're just printing out blockchain version 1, which is the contract I did with Tom, and then blockchain version 2, that license would be with Scott, because him and I maybe have a different module, right? And only that one would print out. If I say print that version, it would only print out the core DPL with the modules that are pertinent to his contract, right? Am I wrong?
Yeah. Sorry, the only thing I'd add to that is you can contract between LDEs who have become users who've then decided to create a project. That project can also contract. So it's still a one-to-one, but the project might include, as we've got further down on page 17, is there's a project here which actually has got 2 users in command. So you can contract between that project and one other user or 2 other users, and that's still a one-to-one contract. Again, just using the wrapper. But otherwise, yes, what you just said is right.
Well, I'm not saying specifically users have to be users. They could be corporations or entities. Or But what I'm saying is that the Dreamcatcher machine would keep track of all that for me. So when I filter and print, it's only going to be printing the one that I care about for that particular thing. I mean, of course, we're talking about something that probably no one else is going to do other than us for, but it is what it is. But we can talk about it, right? So,
well, hopefully it's going to be incredibly useful. I don't know. Maybe not.
I think it's one of these situations where it's important to us. We think it's very important, but everybody else in the world isn't going to give 2 flying shits about whether or not they print this out.
That may well be the case. Yeah, may well. You know, in that table that I drew, actually, I think I've got it further down under my notes. The very first step is anarchy, which is essentially the only compulsion is imposed by the DCM through governance. And that's very light. There's no recourse. There's no warranties. You can't go outside using that. However, the DCM imposes who has control over the thing that you're building. And that's the bootstrap step. If that makes sense. And you're right. Most people, I don't know, maybe some won't, but most people will probably live in that area.
I still don't get the question that you're asking. Why you called this meeting? Like, I still don't get that.
Okay. So the diagram aside, and Troy, if you want to give a go drawing what's in your head, that'd be really useful. Or we can compare it and we'll deep dive tomorrow. The question I'm asking is, I've transposed the structure of what we see as the core DPL contracts and modules and expressed it in the language of the dictionary in order to see whether it falls down at any point.
You mean to correct? No, I think you've expressed it in the file system.
Yes. So, well, the dictionary structure, as in, the structure that we defined inside the dictionary.
Arranged using the file system layout.
Yep.
Yeah. And your question to me is, does this match what I believe the dictionary was based on our discussions?
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Are there any gotchas? Does it fall down? Have I got it right? I think it works.
Can you walk me through the NDA project? Does the NDA project get used anywhere?
Yes, the NDA module example NDA project is embedded. If you look down, where is it?
So the output asset 01 GitHub repo : example NDA.
Hold on, I'm finding it. Is referred to as an included module on page 25, payload parameters of the contract. So the contract saying
25.
include the mutual NDA, the example NDA module. So specifically, if I highlighted page 25.
So what you've done from page, like 17 down, is you described some projects that have interdependencies within using the file system language, and then you populated all of the parameters that each one would have needed to complete within the template of the DPL.
Yes.
And now your question is, is that right? Because that's like a bit too much to ask. Is that what you're asking? Or?
We might need more than one call to do this one. But specifically, there's a number of things. We're off writing the DPL v01, and that's all great. But what I wanted to do is to earth it back to make sure it's coherent with the dictionary.
So you want to make sure that the ability to use agreement to negotiate between parties using a template language to eventually arrive at something that can be then transcribed into a legal document, you want to make sure that still holds.
Yes, that's actually one further step that I didn't go into, the use of Agreemail. I'm just assuming that
it doesn't matter. Like, I think what you're saying is that page 25 is a structured data format that would allow you to go back and forth with negotiation to have very pointed discussions about what
Right.
values should go here and why, and then ultimately arrive at an agreement that becomes binding by
Exactly.
the relationships of the DPL, and given that both participants have already signed it ahead of time, so that when they click yes and the chain's locked to say this is agreement, then it becomes legally binding.
Yes, exactly.
That's
Exactly.
what you're asking?
Yeah. So we could. I could give you a quick story.
Should it be such a mouthful to say?
It's it's because we're being exact with language, but that's fine.
Or inexact.
Well, so the story would be so if we want to create a contract, in this case we want to contract to build the Dreamcatcher. So we both need to find the core DPL and sign the DPL because we've agreed that we're going to be doing it under the DPL. Therefore, we need a place for that core DPL to actually live and who controls it, which is why the user one, user two, Dreamcatcher command, then the DPL project. So we've got that. Similarly, we've got the. Sorry,
sorry, I didn't interrupt, but the core DPL is not controlled by any user, right? Like it's immutable. Like if you
well, this is the thing. It's got to be controlled by something.
It's controlled by us.
It's controlled by the blockchain, right? Like the blockchain.
It may, if our governance mechanisms become advanced enough that we can shift this to be part of a DAO, then we'll do it. But for the foreseeable future, probably a couple of years, it remains strictly under our control. Just like the GNU public license remains wholly under the control of the Free Software Foundation. They do not give you usage of that license. They own the copyright, they assert the copyright, and they have never given it away to anyone. It's the same sort of deal here.
Yep.
I guess
I'm missing a huge thing that you're trying to tell us.
Well, yeah, I guess I'm coming back to where I'm seeing this license is part of the infrastructure of the code base. Like
it's
you can't get out of it, man.
Part of the critical to function.
Right. Like if you click on the software download, you've already pretty much agreed to the DPL.
No.
No.
No. I think that's where we're drifting. Tom, do you want to take it?
Yeah, the DPL is when you run our software, the only license, you didn't even agree to any license. If you want to modify our software, you have to agree to the terms of the AGPL, not our license. Maybe one day we can make a license that suits us better, but for now, AGPL's there, ready to go, it's battle tested, whatever. The DPL is there only when you want to enter into deeper agreements with other people, or when you want to ask a deeper agreement from someone else. Like for example, when you started contributing, Troy, I was like, look, the attribution mechanism here, we don't have a token, we don't have shares or stock or whatever. We're trying to build this attribution system, and it would be disingenuous and unauthentic for any of us to not take our payment in that form. So I would expect that each of you would ask of me to commit to something legally binding, given the amount of effort going in from different people, and I would expect the same from you, because I don't want to risk the effort that I've put in to end up in some weird situation where, like, it's like now Troy owns it all or something, right? Like, the point is that we don't want any burdens whatsoever on people turning up and just using the software. The DPL is a tool that saves a lot of time. Look at how much time it takes us to even get sort of close to something we like in the DPL. And I guess I'm just sick of all the bullshit. Like, you go to start with a new company and they're like, sign this NDA. And you're like, I haven't seen this before. It's 14 goddamn pages. Do I have time for this? Like, it's just like, we want to make a scale invariant company, a company that it costs you next to nothing to be a member of or to leave. And the DPL is basically employment contract, for lack of a better word, and it's not an employment contract that's there to shaft you. It's there to put you on equal fortified footing with all your peers so that you can create self-composing groups that have strong legal backing to conduct enterprise together in a more rapid, friction-free environment and bring back the goods to pay the whole stack so that everyone gets a cut just for providing value.
Right.
Yeah,
So, okay,
I think
let me talk
sorry,
about
I just want to think add then, which is an important point. There's no privileged
This whole
position
shit
for the
breaks down when there's three people.
It does, doesn't it? The point is, I think I know where we're drifting here. There's no privileged position for the core DPL. We want the core DPL because we want to be able to interact with proper grown-up companies and so on in a way that they can take it to their legal company, the legal team, and we want to be able to have some comfort in how we are doing our business. There's nothing that compels you to use the core DPL, and there's no privileged position for the core DPL. The core DPL, someone else could write. I think I mentioned this. I think I called it the LDP or something. Another version, and put it up and advertise it. And so long as it's self-coherent, crack on. The market will choose. What we're trying to do with the core DPL and this license stack is instantiate the what we saw in the Constitution. So this is how we've built this core DPL. This core DPL embodies that, but the others could have another core DPL or another version of it entirely. It could be completely different. There's nothing that compels you to do it.
Right.
You can run the code without it.
Let me talk it back here and make sure that we're on the same page. So we're saying that you have this core DPL. It's a toggle switch that you want to use if you want to interact with people on the blockchain space, right? And be able to do basic business functionality that, so you can say, hey, you and I will do simple business transactions, simple smart contract transactions or whatnot, right?
Yeah.
But although it's embedded in the code somewhere, it's only toggles on when you click on yes, that you accept it. Yep. And once you click accept it, that's it. Like it's always on, correct?
Yep.
Right, and if you want to get out of that, then you pretty much have to delete that instance and fork it and do something else and turn it off or whatnot, or
yep.
Right?
Yeah, I would tighten that up slightly in that it uses hooks into the DCM in order to execute.
Right.
But it's not in the DCM. The DCM gives you the library of hooks that allow you, for example, to go to escrow and go to arbitration and so on. But the DPL itself is not part of the core code. It runs on top of it.
Well, that goes into my next question, which I'm looking on this page 25. All these AND statements. So all these AND statements don't have to be true, correct, for it to function. It just has to be a certain subset of this in order for it to be the core DPL, right?
Sorry, which page are you on?
25. I'm looking at the 16 parameters here. And I'm just saying not all of these have to be true to function. You just need to have certain critical mass, certain core subset of these in order to actually turn your license on and say that you're being...
Yeah. And what does DCM, what does DCM stand for?
If I turn this on, I don't have to pick an arbiter right away, right? That's comes later necessarily. So some of these are OR statements, right?
Yeah, well, exactly. So let's take number one. Does this contract require core DPL signature? I've said yes, and suddenly now we've got all the clauses in the core DPL turn on, which includes an agreement to arbitration. On your example there on the arbiter, if we then went to nominate arbiter and left that blank, the core DPL states that if you don't agree on arbiter up front, then one will be chosen by a system that we haven't decided yet. Maybe it's just with the highest reputation.
I'm signing this in situ, and I'm just signing it as a user without anybody else agreeing up to it. If I'm just broadcasting that I've signed this, I wouldn't necessarily pick an arbiter when I do
absolutely.
This, right?
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah. You wouldn't.
Yeah. You
would have the option. You would have the option to advertise arbiters that you favoured or were compatible with, which would reduce one more step of negotiation with other people who also felt that arbiter was sufficient for them to engage with you too.
Oh no, I'm just coming up with a situation like I'm a new user. I just booted up. I don't even know who an arbiter is right now.
No. Yeah. So from that point of view, a lot of them would be blank, or they would be OR statements when you first boot up.
Right. Okay. Cool. Right. Good. Right.
And if it toggles on and you toggle it off, we could allow you to toggle it off. It would just simply mean that whatever you did while it was toggled on has a different meaning to what you did when it was toggled off.
Yeah. This is an important concept. I think I mentioned one of the observations in that your agreement also has a time slice. So if you agree a whole bunch of things and do some work under those things, and then later on, for example, there's an update to one of the modules. If you agree mutually the update to the module, because the clauses allow you to do that between the two parties, then everything previous is still under the previous module. So it's kind of time sensitive in terms of.
Well, that's one of the fundamental constructs of modern law, and it's in most countries' bills of rights, is that you can't be bound by a law that has yet to be written. Exactly.
And so it speaks to your point, Troy, on what happens if you toggle it off. If you had it toggled on, everything you've done up to that point, you toggled it off, is still covered by on.
Yep.
I mean, okay, so if I toggle it on, that's essentially my key signature, right? My key hash is signed the DPL.
Yeah. You're making an affirmation that your behavior on chain is now governed by this document. Whether or not we can actually find you and do anything about it depends on what other levels of verification you went through, such as the table given on page, I forgot.
27?
27?
Oh god.
Is it
page 27. Page 27, right? So the power or the teeth that DPL toggling on has is there are various degrees to it based on this table, helpfully prepared on page 27. But by default, you're just basically saying, first of all, hand on heart, I promise. And if you can find me and punish me for my transgressions, then, I did promise. So I'm in trouble.
Yeah. I think that is the core thing that, Troy, we're drifting on here, is the idea that the core DPL is all pervasive and applies to everyone in the Dreamcatcher. It's not. It's really not. In fact, other than us, maybe nobody else is going to.
Optional tool, and to relate this back to one of the concepts you've been touching on lately, Troy, was that podcast with the Constitution DAO. A lot of what they were yearning for was pre-made rules to help speed them up in their construction of DAOs and to help make people be able to get along easily. One of the things they complained about was someone made a meme, it became popular, it helped the project. How do they get some attribution for that, right? No system in place. That's what we're trying to provide, an entry-level thing for that.
Right. Yep.
Mostly because we need it for ourselves, because I want to be able to employ a chunk of fucking Ukrainian developers with the work that we can generate to make apps. I don't want to have to make a company and a contract. I don't want them trying to fucking bully me for stock. I'm like, here is the system. It is a rules-based system. Take it or fucking leave it.
Yep.
Anytime you like to, by the way.
It's traceable back to some fundamental kind of propositions in the Constitution, which is like, that's what we're trying to trace through. That's why we start with the Constitution. So it's like, why is it this way? Why can't you give me stock? Well, because we work under these fundamental principles, which involves attribution, involves transparency, etc., etc. So that's the stack. But I think you mentioned 10 minutes ago, Troy. It could be that most people don't even use this, and in which case they're in the kind of anarchy hosted or anarchy self-hosted, doesn't really matter, but they're an anarchy thing. In which case, the user
market anyway, so I'm not really concerned about them right now. So I mean, they may be great but those aren't the people that we're looking for, right? Those aren't the people who want to be lurkers on the blockchain and just do their own thing and whatnot. I mean, that's fine. I mean, I don't really have a problem with them because chances are that they might become users even if they don't realize it up front. Like they might start using the structure and realize its benefits and just start to click their license button when they decide to be a part of it. Right? So,
yeah, and I think that there's a point here about you were asking about ownership or how yes, this is critical to function, but anyone can fork it and make another version. Like this is just we're doing this only because we don't have one already.
No, I mean, when I'm talking about critical to function, I'm talking about when we were discussing earlier about the ready-made package. If I want to deliver a ready-made DAO on this, then there's going to be certain tick boxes that you're probably going to need for governance and whatnot to make sure that
if you want to make a ready-made DAO, then you want your DPL pre-configured, and you want to make some bits.
That's what I'm talking about in terms of like it being part of the code base and this and that. That's what I meant. Like, I want we want this package to be completely upfront, default template, turnkey, then we have to make sure that this is all the inclusive bits of it, right? Including the incentive structure you're talking about, Tom, and all that has to be.
Yeah, I don't think I care about any of that now. Like that's for other people to figure out and get their noses bloodied and all that. We'll probably have to make some defaults.
That's what I mean. The defaults. That's all we need to worry about.
Yeah, I'm only interested in using the defaults that like I care about to work with you guys on. I am under I have no illusion that we'll get it right in years. Like this will be like the biggest fuck up of the whole Dreamcatcher, but we have to have something to start with. It doesn't bother me one bit that we have no fucking clue what are the correct parameters to start with or anything. I'm just simply trying to dip a little finger in and just grab only the bits that I want.
Well, we're the pioneers. We're the ones that are going to get the arrows. So
I just want to ride the lightning for as little time as possible and then get back to doing some other stuff. This is a whole world of hurt, and it's going to be someone else's hurt, and I'm happy that they would earn some of every dollar that I make if they make me a superior version to whatever we come up with. I'd be happy to pay. Happy.
Can I point out, just with interest of time, to page 21, which is a really gash diagram, but what I've tried to do there is diagram out what the structure above is actually stating. And if there's any confusion around here.
All right, can you tell me what the lines mean in the diagram?
Yeah, actually this was a restriction on doing it in Google Docs because I couldn't actually put annotations on the lines. So user 1 and user 2 are the own through governance Dreamcatcher command. Dreamcatcher command owns through governance the core DPL license and therefore controls
you can do arrows in this fucking diagramming tool. That would have helped a lot.
Okay, right. It was late at night. Okay. The core DPL license is a project itself and has created a module just to be helpful, which is in this case example NDA. So we've now got two assets in out there. The core DPL license, which has got governance
What's
all the way up.
Box mean?
We've got, so the red box is the stack that you print out for work. But so if we just go through, so we got those assets, right? User 1, user 2, user 3, and user 4 all want to contract to create the Dreamcatcher launch project. So those users negotiate on the contract and says, well, there's a module here which exists. Let's include that.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. There's a core DPL license which exists. Let's include that and let's do this under the core DPL license.
Okay.
Then we put in the parameters. And then you have the contract. The contract itself is between those 4 users with stated work inside the Dreamcatcher launch project.
Can I just make an observation that I still think these might be separate documents. So.
Sorry, two seconds.
again, in my mind, I make the wrong, but I'm seeing these as two separate documents right now.
What's
So-
these? What are the two documents?
All right, so if I were to take a box and split this down the middle, I would see the core DPL license module stack being a license file that I need to sign on its own, correct? You take to a lawyer, right?
Yeah. So the core DPL
And then-
license modules,
Right.
is that what you're
And
saying?
then I would see the contract as a separate document that definitely ties to the core TPL, but not
Yes,
necessarily part
absolutely
of the.
right. Yep. Yep.
Okay, right.
Yeah, and by toggling on core DPL module and the contract is the thing that does the toggling. By doing that, you're going up the confidence stack in that table, so you're getting more and more protection. But yeah, you could have a contract without agreeing.
Am I correct in assuming that the box titled Contract Dreamcatcher Launch Project is a contract that has some never before seen terms to the Dreamcatcher that are specific to that project, but one of the prerequisites is that each user must have signed up to Core DPL license version 0.01, including module example NDA at 0.0.1, right?
Correct. Explicitly stated descriptors.
That's not how it's presented here at all.
We were just there. If we go down to parameters on page 25, does this contract require a core DPL signature? Yes.
No. What I'm saying is that how the diagram is written, only user 1 and 2 are part of the core DPL. Users 3 and 4 are part of the contract.
No. Scott, the diagram is missing a lot of annotation and legend and mapping.
I'll work on that today. Yeah.
I was agreeing with Scott because of the background conversations we've had. The diagram does not show what we were saying.
Hey, I thought I was being gaslit.
Abbreviates horrifically.
Even just the arrows would help. But the thing what I checked that confirmed for me that I understood what Scott was saying was that box Contract Dreamcatcher Launch Project is a completely arbitrary set of rules that you're trying to get everyone to negotiate on and sign up to, and it's merely pointing at... Yeah.
Exactly. That's some other commitment that they're laying on top of.
But crucially, and why we're battling so hard to get the core DPL done, crucially, it uses the DPL to give itself power.
It's part of the stack.
It's like a library, right? The basic code you're writing is the contract, which is unique and only includes unique stuff that you need to get your work done. And then you include other things. You include a module, you include the core DPL, and everything inside that, the great stack of clauses in that, become in force.
The way I'm seeing this is everyone signed the core DPL on here. So user 1 and 2 sign the core DPL. And then user 1 and 2 see each other on the marketplace where user 1 puts a flyer up saying, I need somebody in Punjabi to write code. User 2 is in Punjabi, write code, and he agrees to it. So they've got a contract between each other.
Yep.
Right? So, yeah, that's the way I see it. And that would be the separate document I'm on about.
That is absolutely a separate document.
Yeah, okay.
But I would imagine that you could write that separate document as though it was a module in the DPL.
Well, it is a module. It has to be, by definition.
Okay, yeah, great. I am now convinced we are talking about the same thing.
Yeah,
we just have...
No, that's what I'm saying. Everything is a module after the core DPL. Everything.
Yeah.
every agreement, every signature.
Okay, so I feel like we're nice and safe. We found a common ground. We're all here. I just want to add a bit to it.
Oh no.
Hang on. The core DPL itself should be a module insofar as if you agree and sign to version 0.1, that allows you to use the legal grounding in 0.1 to agree to 0.02 and all others. So you
and I agree on that. Yes, absolutely.
The kernel
compatibility is important.
the kernel has to be a module too, insofar as it carries the same upgrade process as the other modules do.
So if I were to write a module 2.0 for DPL, it shouldn't supersede 1.0. It should be some sort of enhancement to that. that someone can agree to and still do business with other people, right?
That is a different problem, which is compatibilities between modules, in which case that's well covered by software paradigms such as semantic versioning. And compatibility and upgrades can be sort of automated insofar as people who you trust can publish that this license is compatible with older versions and blah, 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 blah.
Yeah, well, I guess what I'm saying is like Scott and I had this conversation that if I'm using a license pragma of saying like a 3.0, for instance, like I just joined the Dreamcatcher and Dreamcatcher's already up to 3.0 on the license pragma, right?
Yep.
And then I go and do business with somebody with 1.0, that's forcible. But 1.0 necessarily may or may not be able to do 3.0 depending on the way that the module's written or something like that. I'm not sure.
I don't know if that necessarily works. But certainly, if you're on 1.0, you must have the basic functionality of being able to upgrade to 2.0 and then 3.0 without having to walk the evidence stack on page 27 from nothing again. Basically,
Right, exactly. You're already grandfathered in. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, grandfathered in. If you walk the stack on page 27 on version 1, you can, with a click of a button, be on version 3.
I mean, the idea was that Scott and I were saying that it just we probably want people to upgrade for critical mass reasons. So, like, if a version 1 person is coming up onto the blockchain, he's starting to see a lot of people going up to version 3, then maybe they should start considering going to version 3, right?
Yeah, pretty much, right. But again, it's a choice thing, and it's what you agree with.
I understand. We talk about peer pressure and incentive structures and stuff like that.
Yeah.
You know, because it's just like Windows. I mean, if everybody's on Windows 10, then I should probably want to be on Windows 10, right? Exactly.
Yeah.
And right now, no one's on Windows 11. Why? Because there isn't the critical mass, and no one really gives a shit right now. So
yeah. So I guess the art form for us is to make sure that we stay featureful, but also compact, so that we lose as few people as possible to dissent from what our core. Like, if we keep our core mission tight and small, and make everything else a module, it's better to have a very narrow core with a large number of modules so that the fight can be in the modules, as opposed to we don't want to fight at the core.
No, I agree with you, because I mean that way 2.0, 3.0, those are all modules that you have to agree to at some point, and they don't supersede the core. They're just an added functionality, maybe, or address some issue that maybe some people on the network we've seen, like there's a critical mass of people that need. Yes, so we're added that module, but it may not be applied to you, but it's there if you need it.
Right, and as people get their fingers burnt left, right, and center, I mean, 3.0 is pretty. It probably needs to go a lot higher. I'd say, like,
version 25.
Right,
we just release a new version every 2 weeks, basically.
Thomas, there's some very specific kind of dictionary-related questions I've got under observations now on page 20, points 2, 3, and 4, which I'll go through so you don't have to read. What I was looking for is what's the thing that actually controls stating what you're trying to do, what the triggers are for attribution, and when there's a dispersal event, where's that attribution algo that the payment is actually made. And I think, and I argue that lives inside the contract, because the contract is effectively a project object.
The contract is attached intimately to the governance object.
Well, it has a governance object inside of it, yeah, for sure.
No, absolutely. The project that signs up to the contract necessarily has to be intimately tied. Its governance has to be tied to this contract object. Yes,
well, actually, it does, but only insofar as it refers to it in the annotations contracts inside of the project of the project that's actually doing the work.
No, it's embedded deeply in the governance of that project. That's the only way that a project can commit to a contract, is that the governance, which ultimately controls the project, has committed to this particular...
Yes, sorry, I thought you were meaning that the governance of the project could be used in order to change the contract unilaterally. No, you can't do that.
You could, if you configured it that way, you could, But what we need to supply is some basic red flags to people so that you look at a project and it just says, red flag, they have signed up to this popular DAO contract that's supposed to be fair, but they have left this flag set so that they can rug pull you. Like, it basically, the number of possibilities of ways you could get screwed is probably not just infinite, but probably more than the number of ways that you can be benefited. So what you need is we will supply the first round of basic tooling that just lights up a red flag to say rug pull alert or rug pull possibility. But we hope that other people will take on the greater burden of making more detailed analysis.
Are we talking about a static analyzer for these governance contracts?
Yeah, a stack analyzer and not a vulnerability scanner, but like a things you probably won't fucking like scanner, or like a, hey, right, did you know that 1,000 projects use this config and then this guy changed this one flag? We're not saying what that flag is. We're just saying that it's fucking there.
No, we've got that in auditing for contracts. It's called Slither, and you just load the contract into Slither, and it comes up with that 200 different warnings about what's wrong with this contract.
Yeah, right. So it's that sort of thing, right? And I guess that does loop around back to what you were talking about initially, Troy, which was a standard kind of a DAO. I think I'm more approaching it from the point of view that we need to get started to even know how to present standard. And yeah,
we are the standard by default. It doesn't matter what we do.
that's not great.
We're the first.
Look, it is. I mean, we got the naming rights, right? That we are the standard, regardless of what anybody thinks or what we think. It is what it is. We're by our actions, we are setting the tone for this project. So, and we will collect and populate these projects with like-minded individuals and or unlike-minded individuals, and they'll probably behave in the same fashion as we do. So
yeah, probably and hopefully that's the intention, isn't it?
I actually hope for the opposite, but we're all free.
Well, I think we've got to remember though that there's two. When you're talking about setting the standards by being the first, there are two things we're actually talking about here. There's the DCM, which provides a whole bunch of functionality which you can build contracts on. And there's the core DPL is the first contract to use that functionality.
What does the DCM stand for? What does DCM stand for?
Say again, sorry?
What does DCM stand for?
Dreamcatcher machine. So I can't remember why we changed it, but it was previously digital rights management, wasn't it?
No,
what was the DRM?
It was the Dreamcatcher resource management system. Anyway, do you want to add that to the dictionary? Because I couldn't find it in there.
It's defined inside the DPL, and I've not gone back to make sure the dictionary in the DPL definition. Cool. Yeah. So there are two different things that we're actually. There's two distinct bits of work here, but yes, because we're the ones actually building it, we are setting the standards.
I just want to point out a different point of view there. You guys are both seem happy that we want to have like-minded people here. We actually don't. We want to make a system of rules that are compatible with everyone. We naturally will associate with people that are like-minded to us, but our task here is not to build a system that we like. It's to build a system of rules that can be used to build what we like, but also allows you to build any system. We must be ever cautious to not slay or skew the system towards our way of thinking. It's actually intended to make dissent as unbiased as possible. We're not able to say that we're right or that we're right-minded or whatever. We're just saying this is the basis.
We've already broken about 80 rules, Tom. We've already broken so many of those rules. It's ridiculous. I mean, we live in Western democracy. This is a West-centric thing written in English. I mean, there's all kinds of problems with this from that point of view.
I know, but let's at least make some effort to minimize it. I mean, yeah, it's written in English. Sorry, I hate French. I'm not learning French.
No, I'm just saying.
A useful thought experiment, and I might do this next weekend just for a laugh, is to write an anti-DPL. the most cuntish DPL could possibly think of.
Oh,
and
just
make itself
grab your last employment contract. That's probably all you need.
Because
my point is, as long as we're aware of it, as long as we're aware of our blind spots, that's fine. I mean,
Yeah.
it is what it is. So
Yeah. I just wanted to point that out, that we're trying to build a framework with which to build systems. Yes, we'll build our own system to make our happy place, but our job is to make a framework that you could build Trump's ideals, like Kim Jong-un, Trump. I'm trying to think of a good governor that I like, not bringing one to mind. Anyway, point is that you could use this for extremes on both ends. That should be one of the tests that we built the system correctly.
Yeah, there should be a Gandhi DPL and a Kim Jong-il DPL sitting beside each other quite happily, using the DCM as the mechanism for execution.
Bad choice of words, but yes.
So the specific question, sorry, I keep on going down into the weeds, but there's very specific dictionary questions. In terms of the location of the attribution algos that pay out against the contract, I think they should be inside of the contract, not inside of the project which uses that contract. So you've got a project, you've got a user, they hire, they agree.
I see what you mean. You change the structure of the project because of the fact that the contract has to be a child of the governance, and therefore the attribution needs to be an ultimate child of the governance.
Right.
Which could be alongside. You could make it a peer of you could go governance, attribution, and then contracts, and then the contracts simply link across to the attribution if they want to share things, or they could be direct children.
Exactly. But that's where I think the attribution algos, the actual payment, which is what people are really interested in contracts. That's where
the accounting logic, right, Scott?
Say again, sorry?
Talking about the actual physical accounting logic of the attribution.
Yeah. If actual money is poured in at the top of the attribution tree, where are the algos that actually do it? So let's say the project earns money. Yeah. That attribution, because it's a contract, pays out to this contract. That contract, because it's got contributors, pays out to the users, and it flows through there.
Hey Troy, on page 17, see this this file system layout. Have you and Scott been through?
No.
Oh man, well that's probably we should. Yeah, you guys should. That's quite important because that's sort of when you talk about specs, Troy. This was what we settled on as our sort of quick shorthand way of doing specs was in this file system.
Yeah, I saw that
thing.
Yeah.
That's the very next thing is to go through the dictionary in a similar kind of fine code.
I've already done that.
Sorry?
I've already done that.
Yeah. Troy's been through. There's been a few comments coming through.
I've actually gone through the entire dictionary and extracted the main points and put them in the specifications documentation.
That is impressive. The point of that file system language is that that's basically how I build the system. So it saves me time.
I don't care about the layout. I only care about whether or not we capture what the terms are correctly and what the functionality of those terms are.
Okay. All right. Well, I gotta. Sorry to be rude, but I gotta go in like 4 minutes.
No, that's actually fine. Those are my questions specifically for this session, and Troy, I need to go as well. If you're available for that slot tomorrow, we can go through in more detail. But just to be clear, so the way I've structured this example set of contracts, which is summarized in the really gash diagram on page 21, but it's given in more detail or with more specification from 17, 18, 19, is the example of the use of the DPL.
Yeah,
where things.
That's good. That looks good to me, man. It's it makes me feel very safe that we are talking, all three of us, about the same thing.
Cool, brilliant. So the from, which we didn't really get into, page 22 onwards and so
But
on.
I would remark, it still feels like a struggle, and I don't know why, but I'm just saying.
Well, actually, the thing that struck me, I mean, there's a lot of words here, right? I've gone through, but it was actually remarkably easy to write a proposed example contract using the dictionary structure. It wasn't a struggle at all. I must have spent 2-3 hours tops on these pages, and then rattled off a couple of diagrams. It wasn't a struggle. It kind of logically seems to fit, and it raised a couple of questions about, well, where is this asset called the core DPL? Exactly where's the attribution algo that I'm going to get paid through, and what does it mean for a project to contract a user and so on. It all clicked in quite nicely. It's a real confidence booster to go through. And it's like, yeah, that makes sense. Makes sense to me anyway. So, given that we're running out of time, thanks for that. I've got what I needed out of this. Feel free to give it a closer read. I think it's coherent. And tomorrow, Troy, if you're around, we'll give it a very close read for the specifics and see if there are any gaps in that. And then we can get onto the next bit, which should be trying to tidy up the dictionary. Because there's a couple of things I've already highlighted, like still got to go through and change all the names of the cultish stuff. Still don't like the use of the word project.
We're still, but at some point soon, we need to transfer that whole document over to GitHub so that we can generate a web page out of it, and so that changes become Git commits, which are, that's just, innate versioning. And proposing new names for things has now the process of make a pull request, and then as soon as it's accepted by everyone, then it just publishes to the website, and we're like, we're done.
I think we're probably there now.
Okay.
Probably going through the dictionary in much detail.
Okay. I'm still working on the model system. It's, as I posted those benchmarks, it's outperformed the parts that I care about, which is basically zero cost to add one more chain, regardless of how many chains you have already. 0 milliseconds is like...
I saw that 0 milliseconds. Assume that is a rounding problem. It can't be 0.
Well, it was closer to 0 than 1. So...
yeah.
Like,
that's
it's ultra light.
Now, binary milliseconds, 0 or 1.
Well, yeah, at some point, getting a higher precision timer costs you more CPU cycles than the length of time you're trying to measure. So,
how many cycles did your nano second?
Oh my god, this thing is so slow. Oh wait, stop timing it, and it turns out it's faster. Yeah.
Can I just ask one question before we go?
Yep.
Tom, are we going to include all these examples and other stuff at the very end of this? The guidance and modules. This kind of reeks of a separate document. Is that all? Are we keeping this in the DPL or?
That's Scott's. That's Scott's stuff.
These guidance notes and the examples are all. Oh, sorry, I'm getting a bit of an echo. Are all part of the docket that we hand over to a legal guy and saying, read this, and you should get everything you need out of this. And we've thought it through in detail, as you can see. And then they produce the actual core DPL in legal language, and then we check that the structure still works. So the guidance notes are a kind of one-off for that step where we put it through someone legal. Right.
So I just say we probably need a note somewhere on page 15 that this is just guidance and not part of the license files.
yeah, for sure. Maybe I'll change the word guidance, but that's what they're intended for. These
I actually got lost because I was reading this the last couple of days, and for some reason it didn't dawn on me that I was reading guidance documents. I thought I was still in license.
That's
what? Why is there code?
That's a good point.
So, I'm just going to put something here. So here we go. I'll just put an end statement here.
Yeah, I'll do something I'll go through and I'll change the.
No, I'll just put an end statement at the end there on page 14. So that's the end of the license stuff.
Yeah. And everything else after that is let's try and use it and see what happens.
Exactly. Okay. Cool.
Yeah. Cool. Nice one.
Sweet.
All right, gang.
Looks good. I'll see you guys later.
Yeah,
All right.
happy with it. All right. See you, man.
See you.
Yep.